Hi, I'm Maya Goree, and I'm excited to talk with you today about the keys to raising plant-based kids. My husband and I have two boys who are aged 7 and almost 5, and we decided to raise them plant-based. And I want to talk to you today about why we did that and what that means to us, and some of the keys to successes that we've had in raising our kids on a plant-based diet. First, what does plant-based look like for us? So for us, we eat mostly whole foods, so fruits, vegetables, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, healthy fats, but also some convenience veggie foods like plant-based cheeses and veggie meats and plant-based snacks. We decided to raise our boys on a plant-based diet for several reasons. First and foremost for us was health. I've been vegetarian since I was about 12, and have gone on and off of eating eggs and dairy throughout my adulthood. But we decided to raise our kids on a purely plant-based diet because we wanted to optimize the health benefits for them as growing children, and wanted to get them off onto the best start. So not just for health reasons, but also for the environment. As you may or may not know, factory farming and raising animal foods uses a lot of resources and water and puts a lot of pollution into the environment. And so to the extent that we could reduce our contribution to that process and to the negative impacts for the planet, that was important to us as well. Also, a lot of people in our families, like many Americans, struggle with obesity. And so for us, we thought it best to give our kids the best opportunity to have the tools to manage their weight. And we know that eating lots of plant-based foods can help with that. Also, just eating a plant-based diet is in line with our values. And so we wanted to pass those values on to our boys, to our children. So I'm going to talk about the keys to raising children on a plant-based diet, and the keys to our success that we have learned so far. Still lots more learning to do. So those keys are preparation, flexibility, planning ahead, variety, fun, and community. Let's start with preparation. Since a plant-based diet is not the default food paradigm in most American communities, it's just really important that as a parent that we took some time before we had kids, and continue to do this throughout the lives of our kids as we raise them, to research and to know what foods we need to be feeding them for the optimum nutrition, and just making sure that we know what nutrition and what nutrients they need, and what's easy to miss on a plant-based diet when it's not the default eating program or eating regimen of the community that we live in or the culture that we live in. Oftentimes doctors and teachers and daycare workers or even family members won't really know anything about eating a plant-based diet. And so we as parents have to often educate and advocate for our kids in school situations or with doctors. And so we want to be equipped with the information that we need to answer questions anybody might have, or also just to provide food and alternatives and options for our kids. I remember when my oldest was in daycare before he went to preschool, and the daycare had to serve every child milk, cow milk at lunch. And his teacher said, well, we have to give everybody milk. That's what, the state mandates. And so I was able to, show her the plant-based milk alternative that we feed our son. At that time, we gave him soy milk because we couldn't do a nut milk at school for nut allergies. And so I was able to bring that in and show her, that it was fortified and had all the nutrients that were necessary. And then she was able to just keep that in the fridge along with everyone else's, cow milk, and it was able to feed him the plant-based alternative. But those are the kinds of conversations that we just, as parents, have had to be prepared for to have with teachers, but also lots of other care providers. The next key is flexibility. We thought that with our oldest that, he would be ready to eat anything that we fed him as he was weaning from breast milk to eating solid foods. And so we were ready to give him organic, homemade baby food of all varieties, from steamed turnips to mashed up black-eyed peas and everything in between. And we thought, of course, he'll give us no problems. Well, one of our first parenting lessons was that that's just not the case with kids, and they often want to make their own choices. So we've had to be flexible in what we expect for them to eat, but also just, knowing that kids can be picky eaters one day and will eat anything you feed them the next day. And it just changes from season to season and from, what their needs are and as they grow and change. So first and foremost for us, we don't want eating to be more important than our relationships with our children or with family or friends. And so we're always flexible about that, and knowing that things are not always going to turn out the way we want them to. And our kids are not always going to eat the things that we put in front of them, and that's okay. We also want to give them the opportunity to make some of their own choices. So for example, in our pantry, we have a shelf that's at their level that has all healthy, plant-based snacks that they can always eat if they get hungry between meals, or they can, choose snacks to put in their school lunches. And those are all healthy things, and those give them lots of choices so that they have some agency in choosing what they eat. We also plan to feed them plant-based until they express a different choice if they want to. So initially we thought, oh, we'll just feed them plant-based until they turn 3, and then they can make a different choice. Well, we hadn't had kids yet and didn't know what kind of choices 3-year-olds make. And so now we've realized that we've raised them plant-based, and we eat plant-based as a family. And so they eat at home with us. But when they decide to make a different choice, we will support them in that too, knowing that we've given them a great foundation with access to a variety of foods and with a great start to good nutrition. The next key to our success so far has been planning ahead. We meal plan, and that has been a huge win, just in being able to look at what our kids eat from day to day and from week to week and month to month, and just seeing the kind of big picture on nutrition and making sure they're getting all the different kinds of foods they need from all the different categories, and just getting a broad variety of foods. But also for things like school parties and for school meals, we make sure that we talk with their teachers in advance, that their teachers know what they eat, what they don't eat, and that we can provide alternatives when it's available. So oftentimes, if there's a school party and someone's bringing in a treat that is not plant-based, then we will provide something that's very similar if given a little bit of notice in advance, or even just working with our kids' teachers to send a treat that our kids can eat whenever there's an opportunity for a celebration. But we let our kids choose that treat, and we let them pick it out so that they are excited about it and it's something that they want to eat. And so it's a special treat for them. We also plan ahead for visits to family. When we think about holidays or traveling to visit family, again, not every family member or household is prepared to feed our kids, the variety of plant-based foods that they typically eat. So we always just check it in advance with family and friends when we're visiting to make sure that we can provide anything that our kids might like, but also that, we are being sensitive to the family, the dynamic at their house, and that we can provide some kind of advanced planning. So we always think ahead before we visit with friends or family to make sure that our kids and that we, of course, will have yummy and good food to eat. Same thing goes for traveling. When we travel to for family vacation or that sort of thing, we try to go to cities and places, destinations that have great food culture. And there are cities big and small across the country that have lots of great food culture. And we want to make sure that our kids get to experience some of that. So so cities like Austin and New York City and lots of other cities across the country have fantastic food culture, but really beautiful plant-based communities and vegan restaurant communities. And so we love to take our kids to those places when we travel so they can experience, those wide offerings across the country. I didn't mention, but we live in Little Rock, Arkansas, which has a small plant-based community. And so it's really fun when we travel to get to go to places where there's a lot more variety and a lot more options. Also, in planning ahead, we have thought about where we live. And if you have the option to choose where you live or think about where you live in terms of eating in a plant-based diet, that's something to consider. We lived in New York City for many years before we found our way to Little Rock. And in New York City, there was a lively and rich plant-based food culture, as I mentioned before. And in Little Rock, it's developing, but it's very much a newer idea and newer concept here. And so that's something to consider too when planning ahead, is just where are you going to live and what are you going to have, what options will you have? But we do live really close to a Whole Foods market, which has been, a godsend and a savior for us, just in terms of giving us a supermarket retailer that has a full variety of food. And of course, now with online shopping and ordering, you can pretty much order anything you want that's plant-based and have it delivered to your door in just a couple of days. The next key to our success is variety. We like to eat across the rainbow. As I mentioned before, meal planning really helps with that, to make sure that as we look at our meals from a day-to-day basis and week to week and month to month, that we are eating across a variety of foods. Quality ingredients really help with that variety. The better your input, the better your output. So we try to get really good high quality spices and really good fruits and vegetables and beans and nuts and seeds and everything that we eat to provide, lots of good nutrition, but also just really good, tasty, delicious food. We also cook from a variety of cuisines. A lot of non-American cuisines offer a wide variety of plant-based foods. So our boys love to eat everything from nori rolls to Indian and Thai curries, homemade pizzas, Middle Eastern tapas, and lots of other delicious foods from across different cuisines. And that variety not only gives them exposure to different foods, but also just gives them, lots of nutritional density from across different flavors. And our goal is for them to be able to go out into the world, be able to sit at any kind of restaurant and eat a delicious meal and enjoy it. And so exposing them to variety, it really helps with achieving that goal. The next key has been to make eating fun, right? So we have to remember that eating plant-based is not just about eating tofu and black beans and steamed kale all the time, right? Those things are delicious, and we eat a lot of those things, but we also make sure that it's fun. So we think about holidays and parties and even just weekly eating traditions that can create positive food culture and connection to the plant-based meals that we hope our kids will cherish into their adulthood, no matter what choices they might make later on in their lives. So some of our fun eating traditions are nachos and movie night. Every Friday night we make nachos where we have a variety of plant-based ingredients, and our kids can build nacho plates or tacos or burritos, and we watch a movie together as a family. We also do a lot of pancakes on Saturday mornings. That's another one of our traditions, and our kids always look forward to that. But other things like making biscuits and jam for holidays, or homemade cookies for Valentine's Day, or other holidays, just finding ways to make eating traditions really fun for our kids. So it's just important to remember that just because we're eating plant-based doesn't mean that we're not getting to do all the really, fun traditions that are part of our wider culture, but also, the culture we've created as a family. And the last key that I'll talk about is community. Even though we're here in Little Rock, Arkansas, where there's not a huge plant-based community, we have been able to find friends and family who support our choices and support our boys' choices. And we've really enjoyed getting to know family, or getting to know friends who may eat differently than us, but are welcoming and open to learning more about the way that we eat, and also to sharing. We love to share and introduce our friends to our delicious food and the way that we eat. And, we love bringing, something to share at a potluck when it's not COVID. And so we've really enjoyed doing that. And we're never pushy about any of that, but we do want to share with people that there are lots of plant-based foods and options that they might not have thought of that are really tasty and quite delicious. We just think that, the food that we eat will speak for itself, and that, the light and the glow that we can share with those around us will, will share with the world and our community the way that we eat, why we love it, and we let it speak for ourselves. And we hope that our boys will grow up to do the same.